The October evening was getting darker when Jasmine finished locking up the library. She had just turned 17 2 weeks ago, but unlike most kids her age, she spent her evenings shelving books and helping elderly residents find large print novels. The job didn't pay much, but it looked good on college applications, and honestly, she loved the quiet atmosphere. She pulled her earbuds out and started the 15-minute walk home through her neighborhood. The streets were familiar, lined with old oak trees and small houses with chain-link fences. She passed Mrs. Rodriguez watering her garden and waved. This was her routine, 5 days a week, same route, same time. That's when she noticed the police car slowing down beside her. Jasmine's stomach tightened. She hadn't done anything wrong, but something about the way the cruiser matched her pace made her nervous. Her mom had given her the talk more times than she could count. Keep your hands visible, be respectful, don't make sudden moves. Stay calm even when your heart is racing. The window rolled down and Officer Derek Mitchum leaned toward her. He was in his early 40s with a thin mustache and cold eyes that seemed to look right through her. "Evening," he said, though it didn't sound friendly. "Where are you headed?" "Home, sir," Jasmine replied, stopping on the sidewalk. "I just got off work at the library." "Little late to be walking around by yourself, isn't it?" "It's only 6:30, sir. I walk this way every day after my shift." Officer Mitchum stepped out of his car and Jasmine's heart started pounding harder. She hadn't done anything. She was literally just walking home from work, the same thing she'd done hundreds of times before. "You mind if I ask you a few questions?" It wasn't really a question. "Of course not, sir." "What's in your pockets?" Jasmine blinked. "Just my phone and my house keys, and my library ID badge." "You sure about that? You're not carrying anything you shouldn't be?" "No, sir. I promise. I'm just walking home." Officer Mitchum moved closer and Jasmine could feel her hands starting to shake. She shoved them in her jacket pockets to hide it, which she realized immediately was a mistake. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he snapped. She pulled them out quickly, showing her empty palms. "Sorry, sir. I was just nervous." "Nervous? Why would you be nervous if you've got nothing to hide?" Jasmine didn't know how to answer that. She was nervous because a police officer was questioning her for no reason. She was nervous because her mom had told her stories. She was nervous because she'd seen the news. But saying any of that felt dangerous. "I'm not hiding anything," she said quietly. "Then you won't mind if I search you?" "No, sir. That's fine." Officer Mitchum walked around her slowly like he was sizing her up. Then he patted down her jacket pockets from the outside. Jasmine stood perfectly still, her arms slightly raised, trying to remember everything her mom had taught her about these situations. "What's this?" he said suddenly, his hand stopping at her left jacket pocket. "What's what?" "There's nothing there except my phone." But Officer Mitchum was already reaching into her pocket. When he pulled his hand out, he was holding a small plastic bag with something green inside. Jasmine's mind went blank. "That's not mine," she said immediately. "I've never seen that before." "That's not mine, really? It was in your pocket. I don't know how it got there." "That's not my jacket." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Officer Mitchum raised an eyebrow. "Not your jacket? You're wearing it." Jasmine looked down at the jacket. It was similar to hers, dark blue with a zipper. But now that she really looked at it, something was off. The zipper pull was different. There was a small stain on the sleeve she'd never seen before. But how could that be? She'd grabbed her jacket from the library break room where she always left it. "I think someone switched my jacket," she said, knowing how ridiculous it sounded even as she said it. "This isn't the jacket I wore to work today." "Sure it isn't," Officer Mitchum said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He pulled out his handcuffs. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." "Wait, please. You can call my mom. You can call the library. I work there. I'm a good student. I've never been in trouble, please." But he was already pulling her arms behind her. The metal handcuffs clicked around her wrists, cold and tight. Jasmine felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She couldn't believe this was happening. She'd done everything right. She'd been polite. She'd cooperated. And now she was being arrested for something she didn't do. "You have the right to remain silent," Officer Mitchum began, and the words washed over her like cold water. The neighbors were starting to come out now. Mrs. Rodriguez was standing on her porch with her hand over her mouth. 2 teenage boys from down the street were recording on their phones. Jasmine wanted to disappear. She wanted to wake up from this nightmare. but Officer Mitchum's hand on her arm was real, guiding her toward the police car. He put her in the back seat and the door closed with a heavy thud. Through the window, Jasmine could see her neighborhood, the familiar streets where she'd grown up, where she'd learned to ride a bike, where she'd sold Girl Scout cookies door to door. Everything looked different now, like she was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The drive to the police station took less than 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Jasmine kept replaying the moment in her head, trying to understand what had just happened. The jacket. That jacket wasn't hers. She was sure of it now. But how could she prove it? Who would believe her? At the station, they took her fingerprints. They took her photo, front and side, holding a number board like she was some kind of criminal. They made her empty her real pockets, which contained exactly what she'd said. Her phone, her keys, and her library badge with her smiling photo on it. The officer processing her barely looked at her, just filled out forms and asked questions in a bored voice. "First offense?" he asked. "I didn't do anything," Jasmine said, her voice cracking. "He just wrote something down and kept going." They let her make one phone call. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial. When her mom answered, all Jasmine could say was "Mom" before she started crying. "Baby, what's wrong?" "Where are you?" "I'm at the police station." "Mom, they arrested me, but I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't do anything." There was a pause, and then her mom's voice came back, harder now, more controlled. "Don't say another word to anyone. Do you hear me? Not one word. I'm coming right now." The officer took the phone away, and Jasmine was led to a small holding room with plastic chairs and fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. She sat there alone, trying to understand how her normal Tuesday evening had turned into the worst night of her life. When her mom finally arrived, Jasmine had never been so happy to see anyone. Angela wrapped her daughter in a tight hug, and this time Jasmine couldn't hold back the tears. "We're going to fight this," Angela whispered fiercely. "Whatever it takes, baby. We're going to fight this." But as they drove home that night, neither of them knew just how hard that fight would be. Angela didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, reading through the papers the police had given her. Drug possession. Her daughter. Her straight-A, library-working, college-bound daughter was being charged with drug possession. It didn't make sense. Jasmine had never even tried a cigarette. The girl got upset when her friends posted pictures of parties where people were drinking. Angela knew her daughter, and she knew this was wrong. But knowing it and proving it were two different things. The court date was set for 6 weeks away. They'd assigned Jasmine a public defender, a man named Michael Torres who'd called the next morning and spoke for exactly 7 minutes. He sounded tired and rushed, talking about plea deals and keeping things off her permanent record. "She didn't do it," Angela had interrupted. "We're not pleading guilty to something she didn't do. Mrs. Carter, I understand this is difficult, but the officer has physical evidence. He has photos. He has his report. If we go to trial and lose, Jasmine could face much worse consequences. Then we need to prove she didn't do it." There was a long silence on the other end. "I'll do my best with the time I have, but you should understand that these cases rarely go the way families hope they will." After he hung up, Angela stared at her phone. "That's it?" That was her daughter's defense. She looked over at Jasmine, who was sitting on the couch in the same clothes from yesterday, her eyes red from crying. "We're going to fix this," Angela said, more to herself than to her daughter. She started by calling in sick to work, which she never did. Her supervisor wasn't happy, but Angela didn't care. She had more important things to worry about. She grabbed a notebook and started writing down everything she could remember, every detail Jasmine had told her about that night. Then she started making calls. She called the library and spoke to Jasmine's supervisor, Mrs. Chen, who confirmed that Jasmine had worked until 6:15 and had been a model employee for 8 months. She asked about the jacket. Did Jasmine have a jacket with her when she left? "Oh yes, she always hangs it in our break room. Dark blue one, I think. Let me check if it's still here." Angela waited, holding her breath. "That's strange," Mrs. Chen came back on the line. "There is a blue jacket here, but it's not in our lost and found. It was hanging in the back corner of the break room. I don't recognize it." Angela felt her heart skip. "Can you keep it there?" "Don't let anyone touch it." "Of course. Is everything okay?" "I hope so," Angela said. "I really hope so." Next, she drove to the neighborhood where Jasmine had been arrested. She knocked on Mrs. Rodriguez's door first. The elderly woman remembered seeing Jasmine walk by, same as always. She also remembered the police stop. It didn't look right, Mrs. Rodriguez said, shaking her head. That girl walks by here every day. Never any trouble. Then suddenly a police car in handcuffs? It didn't sit well with me. Did you see what happened? The actual stop? I saw him pull her over. Saw him searching her. Then he pulled something out, but I couldn't see what from my porch. Angela thanked her and moved on to the next house and the next. Most people had seen something, but no one had seen enough. Then she found the 2 teenage boys who'd been recording on their phones. Do you still have that video? Angela asked. The older one, maybe 16, nodded. Yeah, but it's not much. We started recording after he already had her in handcuffs. Can I see it? He pulled up the video on his phone. Angela watched her daughter being put into the back of a police car, her face trying so hard to stay strong. But the video didn't show the actual search. It didn't show the moment the officer claimed to find the drugs. Can you send that to me anyway? Angela asked, giving him her email. That night she started researching. She'd never done anything like this before. She was a nurse, not a detective. But she learned how to search court records online. She learned about Freedom of Information Act requests. She learned about police body cam policies and evidence procedures. And that's when she found something interesting. 3 other cases in the past year. 3 other teenagers, all black or Latino, all arrested by Officer Derek Mitchum in the same neighborhood, all charged with drug possession. She wrote down their names and started searching for more information. 2 of the cases had been dismissed. 1 had taken a plea deal. Angela felt her anger growing. This wasn't random. This was a pattern. She tried to find the families involved in those other cases, which was harder than she expected. Finally, through a friend of a friend, she got a phone number for one of the mothers. The woman was hesitant at first. Why are you asking about this? She said carefully. Because I think the same thing happened to my daughter. There was a long pause. Officer Mitchum? Yes. We couldn't prove anything, the woman said quietly. My son insisted he didn't do it, but our lawyer said we didn't have a chance. We took a deal. He got community service and probation, and it stays off his record if he completes it. But he swears to this day it wasn't his. What happened exactly? Same as probably happened to your daughter. Walking home, police stop, suddenly there's drugs. My son said the officer pulled them out of nowhere. But who's going to believe a 16-year-old kid over a police officer? After they hung up, Angela sat in her living room feeling sick. How many other families had gone through this? How many other kids had records now, or worse, because of one officer who knew no one would believe them? She looked at all her notes, all her research, spread across her coffee table. It was something, but was it enough? Michael Torres had made it clear he had dozens of other cases. He couldn't spend weeks investigating one drug possession charge, no matter how unjust it was. Jasmine came downstairs then, moving like a ghost through her own house. She hadn't gone to school in 3 days. Angela had called her in sick, and honestly, Jasmine did look sick. She'd barely eaten, barely spoken. The light in her eyes that Angela loved so much had dimmed. Mom, what if they don't believe me? Jasmine asked quietly. Then we make them believe you. How? Angela didn't have an answer yet. She looked at her daughter, at this beautiful, smart, kind girl who'd done everything right and was being punished anyway. Something fierce and protective rose up in Angela's chest. I don't know yet, baby, but I'm not stopping until we figure it out. The next morning, Angela was back on her computer when she saw an article about a local defense attorney who specialized in police misconduct cases, Catherine Wells. The article talked about how she'd successfully sued the police department twice in the past 5 years. How she'd been a prosecutor before switching sides because she couldn't stomach what she was seeing anymore. Angela stared at the woman's photo on the law firm's website. Catherine Wells looked to be in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she didn't back down easily. The office was across town in a building Angela had driven past 100 times but never had reason to enter. She picked up her phone, then put it down. Lawyers like that probably cost a fortune. Angela had some savings, but not lawyer money. Not the kind of money it would take to fight the police department. But then she looked at Jasmine's college acceptance letter, still sitting on the kitchen counter where it had been the day of the arrest. Full scholarship to the state university, 4 years paid for, a future that was slipping away with every day that passed. Angela picked up her phone again and dialed before she could talk herself out of it. Wells and Associates, a receptionist answered. Hi, I need to speak to Catherine Wells about representing my daughter. Ms. Wells is very selective about her cases. Can you tell me what this is regarding? Angela took a deep breath. It's regarding a police officer who I think has been framing teenagers for drug possession. And I think I can prove it. There was a pause. Hold, please. The wait felt like forever. Angela was about to hang up when a new voice came on the line. It was confident, direct, all business. This is Catherine Wells. Tell me everything. Catherine Wells' office was nothing like Angela expected. She'd imagined something fancy, with leather chairs and expensive artwork. Instead, it was practical and slightly cluttered, with case files stacked on every surface and a wall covered in photos of people Catherine had helped. Regular people, by the looks of it. People who looked like Angela and Jasmine. "Thank you for seeing us," Angela said, gripping Jasmine's hand as they sat down. Catherine studied them both for a moment, her sharp blue eyes missing nothing. "I read through the police report you emailed me. Tell me what really happened that night, Jasmine. Every detail, no matter how small." Jasmine swallowed hard and started talking. Catherine didn't interrupt, just listened and took notes in a leather notebook. When Jasmine got to the part about the jacket, Catherine's pen stopped moving. "Say that again." "About the jacket, it wasn't mine. I mean, it looked like mine. But when I really looked at it later, it was different. Wrong zipper. There was a stain. My jacket didn't have that stain." "And where's your actual jacket?" "Still at the library. Mrs. Chen said there's a blue jacket there that nobody claimed." Catherine leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against her notebook. "That's interesting. Very interesting." She looked at Angela. "You said on the phone you found other cases?" Angela pulled out her folder, the one she'd been building for 2 weeks now. She spread the papers across Catherine's desk. 3 other teenagers, all arrested by Officer Mitchum in the past 14 months. All drug possession. 2 dismissed, 1 plea deal. I talked to 2 of the families. Same story each time. The kids swear they didn't do it, but nobody believed them. Catherine picked up the papers, reading through them carefully. Something in her expression shifted. She stood up and walked to her filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. "I've been watching Officer Mitchum for almost 2 years, she said quietly. "Nothing I could prove, just a feeling. Too many stops in the same neighborhoods. Too many cases that seemed too convenient. But every time I got close to something, the cases would disappear. Dismissed charges, plea deals that made the evidence inadmissible in other cases." She looked at Jasmine. "But this time might be different. This time we have someone willing to fight." "You'll take the case?" Angela asked, hardly daring to hope. "I'll do better than that. I'm going to take it pro bono, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows why." Catherine smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone preparing for battle. "I've been waiting for a case strong enough to expose what's really going on. I think this might be it." Over the next 3 weeks, Catherine became a force of nature. She filed motion after motion, demanding evidence, demanding body cam footage, demanding the full chain of custody for the drugs supposedly found in Jasmine's pocket. She hired a private investigator, a former detective named Raymond who'd left the force because he'd gotten tired of covering for bad cops. Raymond was the one who found the first real breakthrough. He came into Catherine's office on a rainy Thursday afternoon with a laptop and a grim expression. "You need to see this," he said, setting up his computer. I pulled the dash cam footage from Mitchum's car that night. They all gathered around the screen. Angela held Jasmine's hand tight as they watched the video. There was Jasmine walking down the street. There was the police car pulling up beside her. The conversation was hard to hear, but they could see Jasmine's body language. Nervous but cooperative, nothing suspicious. Then Officer Mitchum got out of the car and approached her. The angle made it hard to see exactly what was happening. He moved around behind Jasmine, appeared to pat down her jacket, and then the screen went black. "What happened?" Angela asked. "That's what I want to know," Raymond said. He pointed at the timestamp. "See that? 47 seconds of missing footage. Then it comes back on right as he's putting her in handcuffs. Could it be a malfunction?" Catherine asked, though her tone suggested she knew better. 47 seconds? Right at the most crucial moment? Raymond shook his head. "I've seen a lot of body cam and dash cam footage. Malfunctions happen, sure, but they're usually longer and they happen randomly. This is too convenient." Catherine was already on her phone. "I'm calling my tech expert. If that footage was tampered with, we need to prove it." But Raymond wasn't done. "There's more. I did some digging into Mitchum's online activity. Nothing illegal, just public record stuff. Guess what I found? He pulled up another screen showing an online purchase receipt.
3 months ago, Officer Derek Mitchum purchased evidence bags from an online supplier.
50 bags, same type the department uses. The room went silent. Angela felt her heart pounding. Why would a police officer need to buy evidence bags? Exactly, Raymond said. The department supplies those. There's no reason for him to have his own unless he's planting evidence, Catherine finished. She looked at Jasmine with something like fury in her eyes. He's been doing this on purpose, systematically. The next discovery came from examining the physical evidence itself. Catherine had filed a motion to have the evidence independently tested, and the results came back 2 weeks before trial. The forensics expert, a woman named Dr. Patricia Lowell, came to the office to explain her findings in person. The bag itself had fingerprints, Dr. Lowell said, laying out her report. But here's what's interesting. The only fingerprints on that bag belonged to Officer Mitchum. Not a single print from Jasmine. How is that possible if it was in my pocket? Jasmine asked. It's not, Dr. Lowell said simply. If you had that bag in your pocket even for 5 minutes, your fingerprints would be on it. The oils from your skin, the way you'd have to grip it to put it away, pull it out. There would be traces of you. But there aren't any. Angela felt tears building but forced them back. So he planted it. I can't make that determination legally, Dr. Lowell said carefully. But I can testify that the forensic evidence is inconsistent with the officer's version of events. Catherine was building something bigger than just Jasmine's defense now. She'd tracked down the other families, the other teenagers who'd been arrested by Mitchum. 2 of them agreed to testify, even though their cases were closed. They were scared, but they were also angry. One was a 19-year-old named Tyler who'd taken a plea deal that still haunted him. I didn't do it, he told Catherine and Angela when they met at a coffee shop. But my public defender said I'd lose at trial. Said it was my word against the cops and nobody would believe me. So I took the deal, did my community service, and now I've got it hanging over my head forever. If I get in any trouble in the next 3 years, even a traffic ticket, I could go to jail. Would you be willing to testify about what happened to you? Catherine asked. Tyler looked scared but nodded. If it helps someone else, yeah, I'll do it. The other witness was even more powerful. Her name was Destiny, and she was 20 now. Her case had been dismissed, but only after she'd spent 2 weeks in juvenile detention because her family couldn't afford bail. He destroyed my senior year, Destiny said, her voice shaking with emotion. I missed homecoming because I was locked up. I missed college application deadlines. I lost my scholarship opportunities. And for what? For something I didn't do. Something he made up. But Catherine's biggest surprise came from inside the police department itself. Raymond's contacts led them to an officer named Kevin Walsh, who'd worked alongside Mitchum for 3 years. Kevin had quit the force 6 months ago, citing personal reasons. But when Raymond reached out to him, the real story came out. They met at a park away from anywhere they might be seen. Kevin was in his 30s, looking tired and haunted. I should have said something sooner, he started. But you don't know what it's like. The pressure to stay quiet. To back up your fellow officers no matter what. What did you see? Catherine asked gently. Kevin took a deep breath. Little things at first. Mitchum carrying around his own evidence bags. Gaps in his body cam footage that he'd laugh about. Say it was technical problems. But then I started noticing patterns. He'd go into certain neighborhoods, always the same ones, and always come back with arrests. Young kids, mostly minorities. And the evidence was always just a little too convenient. Did you ever confront him? Once, he told me to mind my own business. Said I didn't understand how things worked. That sometimes you had to bend the rules to keep neighborhoods safe. Kevin's hands were shaking. But what he was doing wasn't keeping anyone safe. He was destroying lives. Will you testify? Catherine asked. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, I will. It's time someone stopped him. As the trial date approached, Angela watched her daughter slowly come back to life. Jasmine started eating again, started sleeping better. The hope that had been crushed that night on the street corner was carefully, cautiously building again. Do you think we can win? Jasmine asked one night. Angela looked at all the evidence Catherine had gathered, all the witnesses willing to speak up, all the holes in Officer Mitchum's story. I think we have a real chance, baby. A real chance, but both of them knew that having a chance and winning were 2 different things. In 5 days, they'd be in court, and the whole world would be watching. The courthouse was more crowded than anyone expected. Word had spread through the community about Jasmine's case, and people showed up to support her. Mrs. Chen from the library was there, Mrs. Rodriguez from the neighborhood, teachers from Jasmine's school. Even some of the college representatives who'd been recruiting her sat in the back rows, watching quietly. Angela squeezed Jasmine's hand as they walked through the crowd. Her daughter looked small and scared in her navy blue dress, but she held her head high. Catherine walked beside them, carrying a leather briefcase that Angela knew was filled with everything they needed to win. The prosecutor was a man named James Hartley, and he looked exactly like what Angela expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from winning most of his cases. He barely glanced at Jasmine as they took their seats, already organizing his papers with practiced efficiency. Judge Maria Thornton entered, and everyone stood. She was a black woman in her 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Angela had done her research. Judge Thornton had a reputation for being fair but tough. She didn't tolerate nonsense from either side. "We're here for the case of the state versus Jasmine Carter," Judge Thornton said. "Drug possession charges. Are both sides ready?" "Yes, Your Honor," Hartley and Catherine said in unison. The jury had been selected the day before, 12 people who would decide Jasmine's future. Angela had studied each of their faces, trying to guess what they were thinking. Now they sat in the jury box, watching everything with careful attention. Hartley stood up for his opening statement. He painted a clear picture: a routine police stop, a trained officer doing his job, physical evidence found on the defendant, open and shut case. "The evidence will show that Officer Derek Mitchum followed procedure perfectly," Hartley said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "He made a lawful stop, conducted a lawful search, and found illegal substances on the defendant. This isn't complicated. This is simply a case of someone who got caught and is now trying to blame the officer who was just doing his duty." Then it was Catherine's turn. She stood slowly, letting the silence build for a moment before she spoke. "What Mr. Hartley calls a simple case is actually something much more disturbing," she began. "This isn't just about one teenager and one night. This is about a pattern of misconduct that's been going on for years. This is about an officer who's been systematically targeting young people in certain neighborhoods, planting evidence and ruining lives. And we're going to prove it." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Judge Thornton gavelled for silence. Hartley called Officer Mitchum as his first witness. The officer walked to the stand with his uniform pressed and perfect, his badge gleaming under the courtroom lights. He took the oath with his hand on the Bible, his voice steady and sure. Hartley led him through the testimony methodically. The stop, the conversation, the search, the discovery of the drugs. Mitchum delivered every line perfectly, like he'd rehearsed it 1,000 times, probably because he had. "And where exactly did you find the substance?" Hartley asked. "In the defendant's left jacket pocket, sir. I observed suspicious behavior, and following proper protocol, I requested permission to search. She consented, and I found a plastic bag containing what appeared to be marijuana." "What was her demeanor when you found it?" "She immediately denied it was hers, claimed she'd never seen it before." Classic response when someone gets caught. "No further questions," Hartley said, sitting down with a satisfied look. Now it was Catherine's turn. She approached the witness stand slowly, carrying a folder. Angela held her breath. "Officer Mitchum, you said Jasmine consented to the search?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did you record this consent on your body cam?" "The body cam had a technical malfunction during that portion of the stop." Catherine raised her eyebrows. "A malfunction? How convenient. How often do you experience these technical malfunctions?" "Objection relevance," Hartley called out. "I'll allow it," Judge Thornton said. "Answer the question, officer." Mitchum shifted slightly. "Equipment malfunctions happen occasionally. It's not uncommon." "Let's talk about this particular malfunction," Catherine said. She pulled out a document. "According to the timestamp on your dash cam, the footage cut out for exactly 47 seconds. Right at the moment when you claim to have found the drugs. Then it came back on right as you were placing Jasmine in handcuffs. Does that sound like a random technical malfunction to you?" "I can't speak to the technical specifications of the equipment." "No, but you can speak to your actions. During those 47 seconds, what exactly were you doing?" "Conducting a search, as I stated. A search that left no fingerprints from Jasmine on the evidence bag." "How do you explain that?" Mitchum's jaw tightened. "I don't know. Maybe she was wearing gloves. In October, when it was 65 degrees? And you didn't mention gloves in your report, did you? I may have overlooked that detail. Catherine moved closer. Or maybe there's a simpler explanation. Maybe Jasmine's fingerprints aren't on that bag because she never touched it, because it was never in her pocket. Objection. Hartley was on his feet. Counsel is arguing, not questioning. Sustained, Judge Thornton said. Rephrase, Ms. Wells. Catherine nodded. Officer Mitchum, do you purchase your own evidence bags? The courtroom went dead silent. Mitchum's face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. No. You're under oath, officer. Let me ask again. Have you ever purchased evidence bags from an online supplier? A pause. Too long. I may have ordered some for personal use. Personal use? What personal use does a police officer have for 50 evidence bags that are identical to the ones used by your department? Mitchum didn't answer. His lawyer face was cracking just slightly, but everyone could see it. Catherine pulled out another document. These are purchase records showing that you bought evidence bags 3 months ago. The same type found at the scene. Can you explain why you needed your own supply? I wanted backup supplies. In case we ran short. Really? Is that department policy, for officers to maintain their own evidence bag supplies? No, but no further questions. As Mitchum stepped down, Angela saw something she'd been waiting weeks to see. Doubt, on the jurors' faces, in their body language. They were starting to question the officer's story, but Catherine wasn't done. She called Dr. Lowell, the forensics expert, who calmly explained how the fingerprint evidence didn't match the officer's testimony. She called Raymond, who showed the jury the dashcam footage with its suspicious gap. She called the tech expert, who testified that the footage had likely been tampered with. Then came Tyler and Destiny. They each told their stories, and Angela watched the jury's faces change even more. This wasn't just about Jasmine anymore. This was bigger. But the moment that changed everything came when Catherine called Kevin Walsh to the stand. Hartley objected immediately. Your Honor, Officer Walsh's testimony is hearsay and irrelevant to this specific case. It goes to establishing a pattern of behavior, Your Honor, Catherine countered. Officer Walsh worked directly with Officer Mitchum and can speak to his conduct. Judge Thornton considered for a moment. I'll allow it, but stay focused on what's relevant to this case. Ms. Wells, Kevin looked nervous as he took the stand, but his voice was steady when he began speaking. I worked with Derek Mitchum for 3 years, Kevin said, and over that time I saw things that bothered me. Things I should have reported but didn't. What kind of things? Catherine asked gently. I saw him carrying evidence bags that didn't come from our supply. I saw him go into certain neighborhoods and always come back with arrests. Young kids mostly, and when I asked him about the gaps in his body cam footage, he'd joke about it. Say the equipment was faulty, but it only seemed faulty during searches. Did you ever confront him about this? Once he told me to stay out of it. Said I didn't understand how to keep neighborhoods safe. That sometimes you had to be creative. Creative? What did he mean by that? Kevin looked directly at Mitchum, who was glaring at him from the gallery. He meant planting evidence, making cases that wouldn't exist otherwise. He thought he was doing good work, cleaning up the streets. But he was destroying innocent kids' lives. The courtroom erupted. Judge Thornton's gavel came down hard, calling for order. Angela looked at Jasmine and saw tears streaming down her daughter's face. But this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Finally, someone was telling the truth. When Catherine rested her case, the courtroom felt different. The certainty that Hartley had started with was gone. The jury looked at Officer Mitchum with suspicion now, not respect. Hartley did his best in closing arguments, talking about reasonable doubt and the burden of proof. But his words felt hollow against everything they'd heard. Catherine's closing was simple and powerful. Jasmine Carter walked home from work that night as an innocent girl. She still is. The only guilty party in this courtroom is the one who wore a badge and abused the power it gave him. Now they waited for the jury to decide who they believed. The jury was out for 4 hours. 4 hours that felt like 4 years to Angela, as she sat in the courthouse hallway with Jasmine's head resting on her shoulder. Catherine had warned them it might take time, that a quick verdict could go either way, but waiting was torture. Jasmine had barely spoken since the trial ended. She just sat there, exhausted from reliving that night over and over, from having her life picked apart in front of strangers, from hoping so hard that it physically hurt. When the bailiff finally came out and told them the jury had reached a verdict, Angela felt her whole body go numb. This was it. Everything came down to the next few minutes. They filed back into the courtroom. Officer Mitchum sat on the other side with Hartley, his face unreadable. The gallery was packed again, everyone who'd been waiting outside pushing back in to hear the decision. Judge Thornton entered and everyone stood. Then the jury filed in and Angela tried to read their faces, tried to find some hint of what was coming. But they all looked straight ahead, serious and somber. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Thornton asked. The forewoman stood. She was a middle-aged woman who'd sat in the front row, taking notes through the whole trial. "We have, Your Honor. In the case of the state versus Jasmine Carter on the charge of drug possession, how do you find?" The moment stretched out forever. Angela gripped Jasmine's hand so hard she was probably hurting her, but she couldn't let go. "We find the defendant not guilty." The courtroom exploded. People were cheering, crying, hugging each other. Angela pulled Jasmine into her arms and just held her, feeling her daughter's whole body shaking with sobs of relief. Over Jasmine's shoulder she saw Catherine smiling. Not her lawyer smile, but a real, genuine smile of victory. Judge Thornton gavelled for order, but even she looked pleased. "The defendant is free to go. All charges are dismissed." Then she looked directly at Officer Mitchum. "I'm also ordering an immediate investigation into the conduct of Officer Derek Mitchum. Bailiff, please ensure that he remains available for questioning." Mitchum's face finally showed emotion. Fear. His lawyer was already on his feet, objecting, but Judge Thornton wasn't having it. This court has heard compelling evidence of misconduct, evidence of a pattern that suggests systematic abuse of power. This matter will be thoroughly investigated, and if warranted, appropriate charges will be filed. This court is adjourned. As they left the courthouse, reporters were everywhere. Cameras, microphones, questions being shouted from every direction. Catherine handled most of it, making a statement about justice and accountability while Angela and Jasmine stood beside her. But one reporter managed to get close enough to ask Jasmine directly, "How do you feel right now?" Jasmine looked at the camera, and for the first time in weeks, Angela saw fire in her daughter's eyes. "I feel like I got my life back, but I'm also thinking about all the other kids who didn't. All the ones who took plea deals because they were scared, or who have records now for things they didn't do. This shouldn't have happened to me, and it shouldn't happen to anyone else." The video went viral within hours. By that evening, news stations across the country were covering the story. A police officer potentially framing teenagers, a 17-year-old girl fighting back, a system that almost failed her but didn't, thanks to one determined mother and one lawyer who refused to give up. The investigation that Judge Thornton ordered moved fast. Within a week, Officer Derek Mitchum was arrested. The charges were serious: evidence tampering, false imprisonment, civil rights violations, and abuse of authority. More victims came forward once they heard the news. Kids who'd been too scared to speak up before but found courage in Jasmine's story. The final count was staggering. 11 cases over 3 years. 11 young people whose lives had been damaged or destroyed by one officer who thought he was above the law. Some of the cases were reopened. Convictions were overturned. Records were expunged. But the damage, the lost opportunities, the trauma, that couldn't be undone so easily. Tyler, who'd testified at the trial, had his record cleared. He enrolled in community college with a new scholarship program that was set up specifically for victims of police misconduct. Destiny got into a university with a full ride, 4 years late, but finally getting her chance. As for Officer Mitchum, his trial was scheduled for the following year. His lawyer was already trying to make deals, but Catherine had made sure the evidence was airtight. Kevin Walsh's testimony, combined with the forensic evidence and the pattern of cases, painted a picture no jury would ignore. But for Jasmine and Angela, life was slowly returning to something like normal. Better than normal, actually. The scholarship offers didn't just come back, they multiplied. Universities across the country reached out, impressed not just by Jasmine's grades, but by her courage. News articles called her the girl who stood up to injustice. Organizations fighting for criminal justice reform invited her to speak. It was overwhelming. But Jasmine handled it with the same grace and strength she'd shown through the whole ordeal. She chose a university 3 hours away, far enough to feel independent but close enough to visit home on weekends. She declared a major in criminal justice with a minor in public policy. "I'm going to change this system," she told her mom the night before leaving for college, "so no one else has to go through what I went through." Angela believed her. If anyone could do it, it was her daughter. Catherine stayed in touch, calling every few weeks to check in. The two women had formed a bond through the trial, and Catherine started inviting Angela to help with other cases. Nothing official, nothing that required a law degree, but Angela had a way of connecting with families going through the system, of making them feel less alone. She started taking time off from her nursing shifts to volunteer at Catherine's office, helping other parents navigate the nightmare of seeing their children accused of crimes they didn't commit. 6 months after the trial, they organized a community meeting about police accountability. The turnout was massive. Mrs. Rodriguez was there along with Mrs. Chen from the library and dozens of other people from the neighborhood. Kevin Walsh spoke, talking about the importance of officers standing up against corruption even when it was hard. Tyler and Destiny shared their stories, and Jasmine spoke last. She stood at that podium, no longer the scared girl who'd been arrested on her way home from work, but a confident young woman with a mission. "What happened to me wasn't right," she said. "But what happened after? People believing me, fighting for me, refusing to let injustice win. That gives me hope. We can't change the past, but we can change the future. We can demand better. We can hold people accountable. We can make sure the next kid who gets stopped by police doesn't have to fight as hard as I did just to prove their innocence." The room erupted in applause, and Angela watched her daughter with pride so fierce it almost hurt. This was who Jasmine had always been: strong, determined, unwilling to accept wrong just because it was easier. The system had tried to break her and failed. A year after the trial, Officer Mitchum was convicted on 8 counts of evidence tampering and civil rights violations. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison and permanently banned from law enforcement. It wasn't enough, not really. 6 years couldn't give back what he'd taken from 11 young people. But it was something. It was accountability. It was justice, imperfect but real. The police department implemented new policies. Mandatory body cam footage with no gaps allowed. Random audits of evidence procedures. Increased oversight and an anonymous hotline for officers to report misconduct. Were these policies enough? Probably not. But they were a start. And they existed because Jasmine and her family had refused to stay silent. On the anniversary of her arrest, Jasmine came home from college for the weekend. She and Angela drove to the spot where it had happened, that ordinary street corner that had changed their lives. They stood there for a moment, not saying anything, just remembering. "You know what's weird?" Jasmine finally said. "I used to be so angry about what happened. And I'm still angry, don't get me wrong, but I'm also grateful in a strange way, because it showed me who I am. It showed me that I'm stronger than I thought. And it gave me purpose." Angela put her arm around her daughter. "You were always strong, baby." That night just proved it to everyone else. They stood there a little longer watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The same houses, the same trees, the same street where Jasmine used to walk home from work without a care in the world. But everything was different now. She was different. The world was different, at least a little bit. Later that week, Jasmine gave an interview to a national news program about criminal justice reform. She talked about her case, about the other victims, about the changes that still needed to happen. At the end, the interviewer asked what she wanted people to take away from her story. Jasmine thought for a moment. "I want people to know that one voice can make a difference. One person standing up can start a movement. I was just a girl walking home from work, and I could have disappeared into the system like so many others. But my mom fought for me. Catherine fought for me." Kevin Walsh found the courage to tell the truth. And together we changed things. So if you see something wrong, speak up. If someone you love is being treated unjustly, fight for them. Don't let the system make you feel powerless, because you're not. We're not. The interview ended, but Jasmine's fight didn't. She continued her studies, continued speaking out, continued working toward the change she'd promised. And every step of the way, Angela was there, proud of the daughter who'd been tested by injustice and emerged not broken, but unbreakable. Years later, when Jasmine graduated at the top of her law school class, Angela sat in the audience crying happy tears. Her daughter was going to be a lawyer, a voice for people who needed one, a fighter for justice in a system that desperately needed fighters. The girl who'd been arrested on her way home from the library was going to change the world. And honestly, Angela had never doubted it for a second.